And we're going to move on to the final question of the day. BIM is the answer to local government's need for efficiency savings. I'm going to invite Tom Oulton of the East Riding of Yorkshire Council. Tom's going to argue in favour that BIM is the answer to local government's need for efficiency savings. And I'm going to invite Ron Eckersley, a veteran of local government procurement, to argue that BIM is not the answer to the local government issue of efficiency. So, Tom Oulton, you've got 5 minutes.
Right. Yes, it is.
We've got loads of time then.
All right, is that not reasoned enough? Okay. So the question, is BIM the answer to local government's need for efficiency savings outlined in Construction 2025? So we'll take a look at those headline-grabbing stats. 33% lower costs, 50% faster delivery, and 50% reduction in carbon emissions. Madness, says the Daily Mail. It can't be done, says the siloed workers who don't like change around here, thank you very much. Well, as is often the case, we need to look a little further than just the headlines. The 33% lower costs is to be achieved across the whole life cost of an asset, which is right up local government street. We've got all those Victorian buildings littering the streets. Our portfolio has seen the rise and fall of empires. We've got how many refurbs, how many surveys, how many explorative works, and how many unknown unknowns have we had to uncover during that time? Well, because of that, the one thing we do know is what we build today is ours for a very, very long time. All of that work, all of that wasted money that we can preempt by using BIM. That 33% is achieved through the elimination of these needless repetitive works, the site visits, the opening up the just by opening up the model, freezing the elements we're not interested in, and finding out exactly where that tank cold water service runs. The cost reduction is also achieved by being able to predict energy consumption in the design stage, making informed decisions about material choice based on how they will affect building performance, and reducing the performance gap. This is already being achieved to 35% at the Ministry of Justice, with BIM being an integral part of that. BIM aids better facilities management, so we can make better decisions on a day-to-day basis, even down to the checking this new cleaning product isn't going to affect the floors that we've just put in at great expense, because we've got all that information there. 50% faster delivery. What? You suddenly want a massive school extension building in 6 months instead of 12. That's impossible. Well, yes it is. But again, if we look a little deeper, it's 50% faster delivery from project inception to handover. So that means we need to reduce the time on site, but we can also reduce the time through the production of better and more robust information from the start of the project. The architect's initial concept models can now be used by the technical designers and expanded upon. They can be shared across the discipline and checked more readily. We have a suite of British standards and PASs to help us achieve these goals. We also have REBA's new plan of works, and we'll soon have the BIM toolkit from the MBS, which is excellent, and beta testing starts next month. We've got 50%, we have to achieve a 50% reduction in carbon emissions. Surely not. Yes, no problem, no problem. At the East Riding, we already have an energy and carbon management plan that will see us reduce our carbon emissions by over a third by 2025, that will be supplemented by that will be bolstered by the use of BIM. In fact, I've written here, BIM supplements this by facilitating this with a pincer movement, where we go from waste reduction on one side, where we can achieve accurate material procurement from the call-offs generated from the model, and then better thermal modelling from the other side, playing about with project parameters to ensure we have the most energy and carbon efficient solution we can. But local government's need for BIM is greater than the sum of these parts. Philosophy. Immanuel Kant, who's heard of him? No, one good man. Immanuel Kant was an 18th century German philosopher. Kant argued that the fundamental concepts that structure human experience and he argued that fundamental concepts structure human experience and that reason is the source of humanity. He postulated that we have a single moral obligation, which he called the categorical imperative, which is in turn derived from Cicero's concept of duty. I'm sure you're all with me on that so far. Anyway, I have taken a bit of a random turn there. But we'll come back to how this affects us as a council. The East Riding of Yorkshire Council has a vision statement. We exist to improve the quality of life for our community. That can be split down further into maximising our potential, valuing our environment, reducing costs and raising performance. I think that all sounds like BIM. This is our duty to do the best we can and to be as efficient as possible. And those are the efficiency savings we're striving for in Construction 2025. So we're not just using BIM because of the industrial strategy Construction 2025. We're using it because BIM makes us more efficient. We're using it because of the categorical imperative. We're using it because it's our moral obligation, because we are human. Even David said earlier in his speech about the moral imperative for BIM. BIM is a collaborative way of working underpinned by digital technologies which unlock more efficient methods of design, creating and maintaining our assets. Yes, BIM will help us achieve our fiscal obligation to reducing to a 33% cost reduction of an asset. It will help us achieve our time obligation to cut down the time from inception to completion. And it will help us reach our carbon obligation. But above all, it helps us achieve our moral obligation. So the next time you're advocating BIM and someone calls you a cant, you can shake them warmly by the hand and say, thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the first time I've ever heard BIM and philosophy put together, but hopefully not the last time. We'll give Socrates and Plato's take on BIM. Ron's going to argue against that motion and talk to us about why BIM is not necessarily the answer to local government's efficiency drive. Ron?
Good afternoon, everyone. The proposition is, as on the board there, that BIM is the answer. Not surprisingly, I'm going to argue against that. But first, let's move away from the heady, cold-faced, sexy thing that is called BIM and what it can do for us, and let's get to the pragmatic, common-sense world of day-to-day of what local authorities have to deal with in this cash-strapped environment. And I put it to you that BIM in itself is not the panacea for local government inefficiencies that we've got at the moment, and I say that for the following reasons. Local government is not a single entity, but rather a collection of 433 disparate bodies under the label local government. They range from county councils to metropolitan districts, unitary authorities, London boroughs, and finally, the bottom of the pile, are district councils. Each of these have the responsibility and powers on a tiered basis, but with a single purpose, which is to discharge functions and exercise powers conferred in them through Acts of Parliament. Nationally, they're represented by the Local Government Association. And it is true to say that their role in any new build, and they may have and they may not have, is as a client, but as a local authority on that numbers that I've mentioned to you. And they're not continually building new stuff. So schools and that may be just something, a vision for the future. It is the main role to manage the assets vested in them and develop and maintain the programme in respect of those assets and to perform the role of full estates management. Some have non-existent or very modest capital programmes on a yearly or quinquennial basis. So as a result, the avoidance of BIM is a real hit and miss affair. Government saw this dilemma when Construction 2025 was launched in 2013 and asked the LGA to set up a construction procurement efficiency group to develop a strategy to help drive efficiency and explore options for all local authorities. They published their findings earlier this month, and it's got the catchy title, National Construction Category Strategy. Chips off the tongue, doesn't it? This is a 24-page document which investigates across 4 main key result areas. The first one is maximising savings through a better understanding of project outcomes and whole life cost. The second one is supporting local economies by facilitating and developing sustainable local employment and economic growth. The third one is modernisation by working smarter, improving efficiencies and enabling innovation. And finally, demonstrating leadership to increase the impact of collaboration, encouraging a more strategic and national conversation with suppliers. This strategy also outlines a general call to arms for local government so as to enable increasing efficiencies through collaboration and partnering, and proposes 11 areas of action, ranging from working smarter through improving client knowledge and understanding of construction procurement through collaboration, to maximising construction values by focusing on whole life cost rather than just project cost. And finally, at the end of the list, encouraging greater participation for SMEs in local government procurement. As you would appreciate, there's much work to be done with local government to create a level playing field. But change is inevitable as a result of Construction 25 and BIM. So for me, to rely on BIM to deliver the efficiencies of local government would be a mistake. I rest my case.
Thank you, Ron. That was excellent. Now, as with all our speakers, we're going to give you the opportunity to ask a question, so you're going to have to stand up again. If there are any questions, same as before, I'll see because of the light, please raise your hands and we'll find you a roving mic.
Thank you. Simon Carr, Managing Director of Henry Boot Construction. I find the question very simplistic. My view is it's one of the answers, but not the golden silver bullet that's actually going to solve the problems that we've got. I'd like to know from both speakers what they propose in terms of some of the structural issues, in terms of CapEx and OpEx. We're frequently, after we secure jobs, we value engineer, and we're actually knocking out elements of work that in the whole life cost of the building have got substantial paybacks, but because of the differing funding streams and the inability to match that with standing accountancy rules causes a big problem. And also linking to the inefficiencies of the procurement process and the ability of those deciding on who or who not is going to get a construction contract, the ability of those to actually decide what good value is. So there's 2 or 3 strands to that question.
Thanks, Simon. Can I ask Tom to take that first of all?
Yeah, it's not the answer, but it's part of the answer. The joy of working in local government for a local authority is that it's a very disparate bunch of people all looking after their own little part of the empire. I think BIM is one of the tools that can help break down those walls and can help make us understand that we are the common client, that we are East Riding of Yorkshire Council, that we're not capital expenditure, we're not operational expenditure, we're not asset, we're not design, but we're actually all fundamentally the East Riding of Yorkshire Council. So what we're trying to do is or what we are doing, is identifying where each department can benefit from BIM, where the facilities team need their input at the beginning of a project, where the asset team need their input in at the beginning of the project, to make sure that we have this continual thread of information that goes all the way through, so ultimately we can provide the better service at the end. And it's not easy, frankly, it's a pain in the arse, but it's worth doing to do this, because we are going to achieve a better outcome because of it. And we do have to look at the way that the CapEx and the OpEx is structured. We do need to go and look at TOTEX, and it's not going to be a quick fix, but at least we've got the right tools in the bag now to start looking at it and to start tinkering under the bonnet and sorting out the engine, because it's not working properly, but we can make it work properly. And I think BIM is fundamental to those changes.
Thanks, Tom. I'm going to ask Ron to respond to Simon's question as well, and then we're going to go to the vote because we are slightly pressed for time.
I think the question posed and your statement, sir, gives local government as a whole body corporate more credit than it deserves. Because at the moment, there are lots of local authorities out there with very few engineers and even fewer architects, or vice versa. So to expect them to understand what BIM means in its full entirety is perhaps a bridge too far. What the future holds through the Local Government Association is a learning curve for all local authorities, which BIM is part of the answer, it's true. But if we're getting collaboration between local government, for local government members, and then for them going out to the outside world should they need a contract, that is clearly a good thing. So BIM is part of the answer, but not the whole solution, as the question advocates.
Okay. Thank you, Ron. Right, I am going to go to the vote now. So you're asked to vote whether you agree with Tom and his moral imperative.
It's your duty
with Ron
to vote for me.
That it's part of a much bigger picture in terms of addressing local government inefficiency. So, and our survey says, there we go. 57% agree with Tom, 43% with Ron. I think that's the closest one that we've had so far.